Hi, my name is Torri Wright, and I wanted to take a moment and talk about what is optimal support. First, what does that even mean? So, when I'm talking about optimal support, I am referring to providing interventions for individuals with challenging or complex behavior, or both, and direct support staff, staff within schools, paraprofessionals, and teachers, any individual working in a program who might work with an individual with more challenging or complex behaviors. I wanted to offer a little bit of insight in how to provide resources and interventions. So first, let's start with what is a skilled interventionist? So I would consider somebody who has been in this field for a period of time and wanted to really hone their skills, would be a skilled interventionist. And they would likely have these attributes. They would know that behaviors are not about them. The application of aged wisdom and modeling of what we want to see more of. So they're not afraid to model what we want it to look like, whether it be in problem solving or being able to regulate themselves, taking deep breaths, all of those things, and talking out loud. I call them verbal social stories. A lot of my supports when I'm working with people, I will tell them what's happening within my body and identify things that are going on so that they have a level of understanding of what's happening, because often I find in this field, we don't really talk about what's happening for us. And then that actually increases a level of anxiety for the kids. And then recognizing someone's who is struggling, rather than reacting to the behavior. This one's a really big one. And I'll also just acknowledge that as human beings, our natural reaction is to become reactive because we want to make it stop. It's not a typical situation. We want to control it because we want to be the good person in that situation. And we also want to maintain safety. Plus, there is a mechanism within us that has been triggered and we've been scared. So really having a skilled interventionist would be somebody who can recognize that starting to rise up within yourself and taking a deep breath and kind of redirecting that. So here's some things to consider if you are wanting to get your team up to that optimizing and support, or you're wanting to develop more individuals that are skilled interventionists. First, you need to generalize the language between supporting adults. So what I mean by generalized language is use language that everyone can understand and the same language. If you're going to call it a sensory support, everybody should be calling it a sensory support, and everyone should know what that actually means. So whatever you're deciding to name certain things, make sure that everybody has an awareness to that. And what that does is it actually promotes a level of safety through predictability or consistency. And predictability, what we know about that, is really critical to reduce anxiety. And so that is probably one of the most impactful things that we can do, is really having every adult be on the same page and consistently and predictably intervening and supporting in the same way. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to be a robot and say it in the exact same way. In fact, it's very opposite of that. There needs to be autonomy for people to kind of approach it in a similar way, but really coming from the foundation that is exactly the same from one person to another. And also collaborating without crosstalk. This is a huge one. This is a massive trigger for a lot of folks in this field. My experiences working in homes and foster homes and different areas where there's a lot of talk about the individual in front of the individual. And even if they aren't directly in front of you, say in that specific room, they might be in a room next to you and they can hear you. I don't know about you, but it never feels good when somebody's talking about me when I'm standing right there. And I have had that happen throughout my life a number of times. And it always is such an incredible reminder for me to know that that is something that is never going to be healthy for the folks that we support. And then consistency in language increases the potential for learning. So when we are talking about providing interventions, if it's problem solving, maybe the approach that we go into problem solving, we call it a similar thing. We all do it unique to our own personality and our own autonomy, but we are approaching the situation in a similar fashion with the same foundation again. And then utilizing a platform for continuity of care. So I put BEHCA on here. Those of you who are familiar with BEHCA, you'll understand that BEHCA allows you to collaborate, allows you to have a living behavior plan, which gives you the warning signs, the interventions, and all that stuff. So you're collecting data, but you're also creating a tool that gives the staff that sort of continuum and continuity of care. And so why that's so critically important is because that is sort of I would consider any kind of platform, whether it's BEHCA or otherwise, is going to be your foundation of how you communicate as staff, how you recognize what's working, what's not working. And then in addition to that, everyone is getting the same language and the understanding behind that language at the same time in the same format. And that's really important for individuals. And then questions versus statements. So questions are really critical. Questions from one adult to another, questions to the individual that we're supporting. Questions offer autonomy of that person, so they have choice. That can be a really big thing and a big factor. It's empowering, it builds confidence, it cultivates an internal wisdom. So if you're working with somebody who does have more of a verbal capacity to integrate with you and problem solve, questions are always going to be way more effective. For one, you're helping them come to their own conclusions and solve their own problems. And number two, it's also building a level of trust. Because if you think about this for just a moment, if you put yourself in a position where you've maybe first met somebody and you're having a conversation with them and you're sharing information and they're stopping you to ask clarifying questions and they're genuinely intrigued, and the questions that they're asking are pulling out this story from you that you're like, oh my gosh, and you kind of either in the conversation or when you walk away, you're like, gosh, that felt really good. That person was, I felt really seen and heard. That's what we want to provide in terms of an experience for the people that we support. We want them to feel like we really hear them, we really value them. And even if somebody doesn't have all of like the highest level of verbal skills, or maybe they communicate through different forms, I still think asking questions and having choices within that space and doing our best to really understand is always going to be a higher level of care. It also improves our relationship with them. And I think I mentioned this before, that trust. So when you are asking these questions, you're not making statements and you're not giving direction, which is often what they experience. And so when we're asking questions, it feels neutral. It doesn't feel antagonizing in any way, which now automatically builds that level of safety between the two of you. And that's a really important thing moving forward with our folks. And then integrating intentional movement. So this is something I would say a skilled interventionist would automatically do. And most often a skilled interventionist would do this through modeling. So I might come in and I might be like, whoo, this morning was a little bit tough for me. My heart is racing. I noticed that I've got some tension in my neck. I really would like to go for a walk. Would you like to go for a walk with me? And then have them go with you. Or maybe there has been something that has happened within the home and you're 4 hours into your shift and you can say, woof, I'm noticing my heart is racing. I'm going to take a couple deep breaths. I'm going to go outside and catch a breath of fresh air. Would you like to join me? Or even just doing it and then coming back in. By doing this more frequently and integrating movement and exercises and modeling, first of all, you're giving the person language. Second of all, if you notice, I have not used any terms like I feel angry, I feel frustrated, I feel anxious, because often when we use those words, the person we're supporting might unintentionally, or that's just how their body is receiving it, they're going to take it personal. That is not our intention, but they might take it personal because they're going to think, oh, they're angry at me. Oh, they're frustrated with me. And when we say things like my heart is racing, or I have a lot of tension, or woof, I need to take a deep breath, or, it's been a tough morning, that is about me and it's tangible, and then they can have relation. And then when I'm adding in these movements and activities, I'm modeling to them how I regulate myself. And I'm also showing them that they're the only ones who need to learn these skills to regulate. When we show them that we also are humans and we need to model and we have exercises to regulate ourselves, that's all of a sudden when they're like, wait, they have to regulate themselves too. Oh my gosh, there's this connection of like, oh, wait, we're more alike than different. And it starts to happen for them, which is really powerful. So environmental modifications, I would say, is one more thing that we can do in terms of support. If I know this individual and I really understand what makes them tick, what makes them calm, what makes them, what are the setting events that happen throughout the day that really agitate them, I then have the capacity and the knowledge to be able to modify the environment to help them be as regulated as possible. Some examples of this would be using essential oils, music. I put on here non-lyric music, but sometimes lyric music. You could do dance parties and like turn it on and like musical sort of like dance where you turn on the music and turn off the music and you dance and then you take a pause. Another element of this is just paying attention to the overall environment and how it's set up, limiting objects and clutter. These are going to be in common spaces. I'm not talking about their personal space. That's a different class. And we want to be really mindful that we're not going in and decluttering or reorganizing a person's personal space without really understanding their background and why they show up the way that they do. But having sort of those common spaces, whether the kitchen, dining room, TV room, those areas, having limited clutter can be really calming in a lot of ways. And then just being mindful of the environmental things like temperature and lighting and so forth. And finally, I will just say teamwork makes the dream work. So having consistent meetings where you all are contributing to a conversation of what is working versus what is not working and how the team will adjust can be such a powerful tool and integration that you can bring to your teams. And if you are a private home where you have direct support staff coming in, or maybe you have a behavior person, I still think having these meetings and talking about what is working, what is not. And I would even say that within family settings, having some sort of platform where you're able to communicate and track all this information, it only makes you better at what you do. First of all, because you can see the data and reflect on it. That data will also inform you of what is actually effective versus what do we need to go back and change. In addition to that, we also start to see trends and patterns over time when we do have that sort of platform where we are also utilizing for collaboration. I hope this was helpful, and I thank you so much for your time. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us at hello@BEHCA.com, and have a wonderful day.